Welcome to the Floodgate Podcast, a vital space brought to you by the Palestine Chronicle. Here we delve into today's critical issues, cutting through the noise of mainstream narratives to bring you a deeper understanding of what is taking place in Gaza and across Palestine. I am Ramzi Baroud. For this special episode, I am handing the mic to my co host, Buna Imbaye, who will be guiding today's conversation. Buna is the Pan African activist, member of the Pan African League Umoja, and the Pan African Brigade for Palestine. Today, we are honored to welcome a very special guest to the podcast, Chris Smalls. Chris Smalls is a labor organizer and a political activist. In 2020, in the context of the COVID 19 pandemic, Chris co founded the Congress of Essential Workers, a nationwide collective of essential workers and allies fighting for better working conditions, better wages, and a better world. Chris is also a co founder and former president of the Amazon Labor Union, the first independent, democratic, worker led labor union in American history for Amazon. As a political activist, Chris has also been involved in the solidarity movement with the people of Palestine and has relentlessly denounced the genocide perpetrated by Israel against the people of Gaza. On July 13 of this year, Chris embarked on the Handala ship, which departed from Syracuse, Italy, to break the Israeli naval blockade of Gaza.
So, Chris, thank you very much for joining us today and welcome to the Floodgate podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Um, so, Chris, before talking about your experience on the Handala Flotilla, wanted to ask you a general question about your involvement within the solidarity movement in Palestine. So, when and how did it start? Like, are there specific events, such as the launching of the genocidal campaign? People, I'm thinking of people have been involved for decades in the Black Solidarity movement in Palestine, including Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, the Black Panthers, Nelson Mandela, Samora Machel, Thomas Sankara, and many others. So, are there people, movements, or events that prompted you to take a clear stand on the genocide of the people of Gaza by the settler colonial state of Israel?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, in particular, with my own personal journey, I've always been very open to bringing different struggles into uh, what I consider the labor movement in America. And, I would show up for social injustice movements. I would show up for climate. I would show up for the Women's March. I would show up for different initiatives in New York City and, of course, Palestine as well. But prior to October 7th, I was fortunate enough to do a panel discussion with Dr. Mustafa Borgadi, a prominent figure in the Palestinian movement. I did an event with him in Concordia University in Montreal, and he laid out the history of Palestine from the beginning, very beginning of the first Nakba. And he also, after the discussion, he gave me his business card and he invited me to come, do some humanitarian work with him or some work with him. Um, and I was definitely going to go. I was set to go before October 7th. And during the week of October 7th, I was in Berlin, Germany. I was in one of the largest Palestinian communities in the world, with 30 to 40,000 of them that reside there. And I seen with my own two eyes how the Palestinian people were treated there in their community, were dragged away from their children, being arrested, thrown into paddy wagon vans, and police kettling the entire community and tearing down Palestinian flags and suppressing and arresting people for saying free Palestine or anything related to it. So when I returned back to the US, I didn't hesitate to speak up on my experience in Germany. And from that moment forward, I just continued to stay active because I lost tens of thousands of followers on my social media platform and so many opportunities overnight just for speaking out during the beginning. And I knew if this feeling before, it felt familiar. The same way when I took on Amazon, how a lot of people doubted us, a lot of people didn't believe in us, a lot of people thought that I should just give it up. And I said, I can't. This is the same type of feeling I had taken on Amazon is what I um, felt when I started talking about Palestine. So I just decided to double down and go harder and continue in every way possible to use my platform and also join many demonstrations across the country, especially here in New York City, and especially with the students at Columbia University who started such a powerful wave of encampments. I was fortunate enough to be with them during day one, week one of their encampments as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Chris. I kind of have a follow-up questions regarding what you mentioned about the impact of your involvement in the Palestine solidarity movement. For example, the fact that you um, lost tens of thousands of followers. So does it mean that people were willing, many people were willing to follow you as long as you did not talk about Palestine? You know,
Hmm.
there's that book. I think the author is our comrade and brother, Mark Lamont Hill. There are two authors. I forgot the other one. I think the book is titled "Except for Palestine," right? So we have some people who are progressive, right? I think you came to prominence with just like you mentioned, the Amazon Labor Union, which you co-founded. But do you mean that some people would somehow tolerate you, quote unquote, as long as you did not speak up for Palestine? I mean, Palestine would be the
Yeah,
exception.
yeah, exactly. It's that simple. It was really shocking and disheartening to see that people would have the audacity to DM me or direct message me saying, I supported you when you were taking on Amazon, but this is not it, or this is where I draw the line, so to speak. And my response is I'm always with the people, and I definitely was very direct with my response, saying pretty much, screw you if you didn't understand the struggles and the connections of this fight, then obviously you're not for the people and you're not somebody that I want to align myself with. So for me and for those who unfortunately jump ship, um, no love lost, no hard feelings. But at the end of the day, a lot of these folks who may have unfollowed me, they may have had a change of heart right now because the public opinion is heavily favored in Palestine right now, currently in America. And even the ones who were silent in the very beginning, from politicians to labor unions, eventually we applied enough pressure to get these people to speak out and entities to speak out that you could have never imagined. So maybe they did circle back and start to change their perception. But I know once again, when usually when they're taking on powerful entities, whether it's government, corporations, or the military industrial complex, I know when you go up against powerful entities that the most important way that they thrive on the opposition is to divide people, keep us divided, keep us fighting amongst each other, and absolutely keep the distractions and the focus off of Palestine. So I just once again remain focused and remain just true to the people that this is absolutely a working class issue as well.
Thank you. So your involvement with the Palestine solidarity movement obviously was not confined to social media or even the streets of the U.S., including New Jersey, where you live. You took it a bit further, and you were actually one of the 20, was it 22 or 21? 22 activists, right?
21 volunteers,
Yeah.
19 activists, 2 journalists. Yeah,
Yeah. So who embarked on the Handala, which is one of the flotilla that was had the objective of sailing from Italy to Gaza, not only to provide humanitarian aid as it has been depicted in the media, but to break, right, the siege, the blockade of Gaza, right? So could you
absolutely.
tell us when you took, um, when you made the decision of embarking on the Handala, and how people around you, your family, friends, co-workers, how they reacted to you making that decision?
But um I didn't give my people around me a much time to even react, or I didn't tell them at all. You know, honestly, how I ended up on the Handela was a really quick turnaround. Just like many others, I was inspired by the Madeleine with Greta Thunberg, with Diago, with Yasmin, with other activists who I even followed their work prior to. And I didn't get a response. I was trying to reach out to them one by one, but I knew they were busy. Of course, they had to face prison as well. So I took a risk in reaching out to one of these journalists that I saw interviewed um, Tiago, that I previously interviewed with last year in another country. And I was able to get through to Hueda Harab, who is the co-founder of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. And when I got through to her, I sent her a message, say, hey, I introduced myself and I said, I'm an American labor leader and I would love to join the next mission, not knowing the next mission was going to be like in a few days. So she called me the next day and was like, listen, you want to be on the Handela or have an opportunity to go, we're flying out tomorrow to Italy. And I'm like, um, you know what? I didn't even hesitate. I said, let's do it. I'm willing to go. And I didn't have much time to tell the people around me, my union. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell my family. I only had a one conversation with my children. As a single father, um, I sat my kids down and basically, didn't want to scare them too much, but I expressed how much I love them and how much I care for them, and um, how much that everything that I'm doing, even if they don't understand it, is for them. It's for their future, for the planet, for humanity, and that I'm possibly going into a dangerous situation. You know, I didn't want to once again scare them, saying that I'm not coming back home, or it's a possibility that I may not come back home. And that was it. 24 hours later, I was on a plane to Italy, and I had to go through the trainings just like everybody else. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the volunteers to make it on the final crew. And yeah, the reason why is because as an American leader, um, a labor leader, this was important to spread awareness, but also apply pressure to the labor unions who have been complicit in participating in shipping arms to Israel for the last 22 months. But also, as an American taxpaying citizen, um, to spread awareness in that capacity as a Black man, for the Black community to understand that this is our fight as well. So, a number of reasons why, of course, ultimately to break the siege, but to connect the dots between our communities, and also Amazon as well, who has been an investor into $7.2 billion called the Project Nimbus, which is absolutely Israel's military industrial intelligence that surveils and targets and help kill innocent civilians. So there's so many things and reasons why I joined this mission um, on the Handela.
In many of your interviews, you repeatedly insisted on the fact that you weren't going to Gaza not only to provide humanitarian aid, because this is part of the coverage that has been done on your experience, but you really emphasize the fact that just like you've done right now, the fact that you wanted to break the siege, right? So why is that distinction important?
Yeah, people, of course, Israel side, they want to use propaganda against us to try to desensitize why we're doing these missions. So they call the last one a selfie yacht. They put out propaganda pictures of Greta holding sandwiches and water. Um, they're saying that they had a small amount of food on board, they couldn't feed anybody, and these type of propaganda, they work to some degree to people who don't do their research beyond the surface level. A lot of people, even with the Handela, they thought that this just started, this initiative with flotillas, not knowing the history. So to give context, the flotilla initiatives have started 17 years ago. This Handala mission, our boat, was boat number 37. Out of the 37 attempts since 2007, only 5 of the flotillas made it to the Gaza Strip. Um, and in 2010, Israel's IOF defenses, our occupation forces, um, jumped on board and killed 10 of the activists. So the history of the flotilla has not been talked about a lot. The media has definitely been ignoring it. Mainstream media, legacy media. If you weren't privy to this information, you wouldn't have never known about it. You would have thought that the Madeleine was the first boat. And people think that we're going to deliver humanitarian aid because that's what we announce as well, to deliver humanitarian aid. But ultimately, once again, as I mentioned, is to break the illegal siege that Israel has imposed for over 2 decades. Even longer than that, we already know that Israel has always controlled the borders in some capacity of what goes in and out of Palestine and what goes in and out of Gaza City. So that is our pledge, the flotilla's pledge from the very beginning. Huwaida Araf, who co-founded it, her pledge as a Palestinian woman, um, is to continue sending flotilla after flotilla, boat after boat, until we break that siege to end the need for humanitarian aid. We don't want to, we shouldn't have to risk our lives to deliver a small amount of food that can't feed anybody. We know, and also we say this all the time, um, that we don't have enough aid to feed a fraction of the people over there. But the goal and the mission and the optics is to always spread awareness and keep the message out there that the breaking of the siege needs to happen now. Even after we break the siege, there's going to be so many other issues we're going to have to deal with. Providing aid is not going to be the answer. Even if we break the siege tomorrow and we allow all the food to go into Gaza, the food is not going to save these people's lives. They will need some food, but they won't. Their bodies are going to be so um, just malnutritioned that they're going to need a process to even recover from famine. So that's a whole nother conversation, is that humanitarian aid goes beyond delivering food, and we have to keep that in mind as well.
Thank you, Chris. So when the on your way to Gaza, so the flotilla was intercepted, assaulted, and seized by the Israeli occupation army. They brutalized several of the passengers, including yourself. And in one of your latest public appearances, which I've been following over the past few weeks, so that was at the Palestinian Solidarity rally in New York, you said, and I quote, "I was the only black passenger of the Handala. It is no coincidence that I was one of the last to be released."
Yeah.
So could you elaborate on what you meant by that? Why was the treatment of that the Israeli occupation forces inflicted upon you as a black person? Why was it different from the others?
Yeah. Yeah. In perspective, for those who want to really, really get a sense of what I dealt with. In my 37 years in America, I've never experienced the amount of hatred and racism and bigotry than my few days in prison and captivity over there in Israel. Um, from the beginning to the very end of the entire captivity, from the moment the IOF jumped on board to the moment of my release, I've never, everybody that I encountered just had such a disconnect and a hatred that you can feel. It's just unlike anything beyond words. And when I was assaulted, it just confirmed that my skin color had everything to do with the way they handled the situation. So for those who don't know, the IOF comes on board with a camera crew. They want to get propaganda, but they couldn't with us because we were on a hunger strike. So we killed that propaganda for them. When we were transferred to the immigration department, there was another camera crew at the docks waiting for us in the morning. 12 hours sailing on the flotilla with the IOF to the port of Rashad. And when we were transferred over, we were all chanting "Free Palestine." We were chanting the Handala song that I created, and I was saying some other things, of course, giving them a piece of my mouth, saying that the IOF wouldn't be anything without our tax-paying dollars. And I was covering my face to block the cameras and saying I don't consent to these photos. And that's when they decided to use 7 authorities to throw me to the ground, put their knees in my back, twist my arms behind my back, take me to a separate room, slam me on the ground, use my chains to choke me, throw me up against the wall. And in my head, I'm thinking to myself, this is just a fraction of what Palestinians have to go through every day. But more validation of how they despise people of color. That was one thing, but the psychological part started right away. When we were transferred to prison, they would lie to us every day, particularly me. They would have me get dressed, saying I'm going home, knowing that I'm not. They will weaponize food, sit food in front of us. They use the raid unit to come raid our cells, make us strip naked for no reason, knowing that we couldn't smuggle anything. And lastly, as you mentioned, no coincidence that everybody else, the 14 prisoners that they had, um, they all 12 of them went who were white went to Tel Aviv airport and was deported to their countries. Me and my Arab brother, Hattem from Tunis, the only people of color, we were let go not only last, but we were dropped off at the border of Jordan. And the flights that they gave us was to send us to 2 pro-Israel countries before even going home. One was Dubai, and the second one was Germany. So they wanted to make the entire experience that I had from the beginning to the very end as miserable as possible. And that's why I say to this day that I've never experienced the amount of hatred and racism and bigotry that I experienced in the few days that I had in the custody of Israel. Nobody can tell me otherwise, and the experience and the facts are proof of itself that they have used systematic racism against Palestinians and against people of color. Even with the prison system, it was full of Ethiopians as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Chris. I think this is something that, unfortunately, many people are not still aware of. And this reminds me, the campaign against, the organization, so-called civil rights organization. I'm thinking of the ADL, for example, Anti-Defamation League, that have been organizing programs, right, of sending um, police officers, U.S. police officers, and military for training in Israel. And
Hmm.
in fact, there was an anecdote in 2020, I guess it was 2020, um, just after George Floyd was killed. So there was a secret memo of the ADL whereby the leaders of the ADL were questioning that practice of sending U.S. police officers and military to Israel. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about that. So how also the policies that are implemented by Israel against people of color or people Palestinian themselves, how it also affects black people and people of color in the United States, for example.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, you're absolutely right. It's no secret that many police officers and police departments are doing working hand in hand with the Israeli uh, officials to train officers. And I even saw something that was even more alarming. A few days ago, there's a new initiative for them to fly from the Foreign Ministry of Israel to fly. I believe it was 500 influencers. You know, people who do social media, whether it's TikTok or social media platforms, podcasts, whatever you name it. They want to fly 500 plus influencers from America to Israel to have, you know, an indoctrination of Israel's culture to show U.S. citizens that uh, it's safe and it's nice to live over there and be a colonizer, and that there's no genocide going on. So once again, these are the reasons why I actually wanted to go. I'm not an influencer, but I am a civilian. I am an American citizen. My tax-paying dollars is going towards this, whether I like it or not. Um, we get fed so much propaganda from mainstream media, from any media really, but from mainstream media that Israel's this, Israel's, um, a good place. Or there's no genocide going on. There's no starvation going on. We're still being told this lie till this day. There's a reason why, and I can confirm this and attest to this. There's a reason why they don't want us to see what's actually going on over there. Not only from testimonies of the Gaza doctors and nurses that I've been in company with and talked with, but for those who don't know, and I want to put this in context, 100 miles away from shores, because we made it less than 60 miles before we were illegally kidnapped, but 100 miles the day of, 100 miles before we made it to Gaza territories, um, we were swarmed by flies. Our ship was swarmed by flies. They came out of nowhere. And in my head, I'm thinking on the Handala, I'm like, where all these flies come from? Did we leave some food to go bad? Is one of the refrigerators out? Did something go bad? Or somebody, forgot to take the trash or dispose of the trash? Um, that wasn't the case. The reason why these flies swarmed us is because the amount of vermin, rodents, and ultimately death that is underneath the rubble and destruction of the Gaza city. And that is the real alarming thing about this whole situation, is that they're imposing this illegal blockade that they have no jurisdiction of. By the way, they have no legal grounds to even put this blockade in place. The reason why is to keep us out from telling the truth and exposing what's really going on over there. Even the night that we were captured, they used the drones to block our visibility by dropping some type of flare smoke, uh, you could say flares, to block our visibility with the drones. And that's when I noticed that not only they're using military operations against civilians, but they are truly, truly terrified that if one of us make it, or if we were to ever make it, flotillas, in recent times, in modern day history now, that we will expose and debunk all of the propaganda and lies that Israel has ever told us. And especially with my experience alone, they have already, it's ironic that with the Madeleine, there was so much propaganda from their side, photos, videos, articles. But with the Handala, virtually, if you look right now, there's nothing out there that you could find from us. Pictures, videos, articles, etc. All I've seen so far about my assault is a statement saying that I was the one that was protagonizing it. I was the one that was the aggressor, which is ridiculous. If anybody was to think about it, we were already on a hunger strike. I was weak. I didn't have that much strength, and they had 7 authorities throw me to the ground. So to say that I was the aggressor, it's the same type of stigmas they try to say about a black man in America. Is that we're always aggressive, that we're always the ones that want to seek violence. So it's systematically, and these are the experiences that I lived, and that's why it's important to shed light on the connections between the police state that we have here in America that correlates to the apartheid state I've seen in Israel.
Thank you, Chris. I want to go back to something that we mentioned earlier, which is the complicity of the major labor organizations in the U.S. And um, so you've been very critical of the largest American labor unions because you're a labor organizer yourself. And just like you said, you think that they've been complicit in the genocide against the Palestinians. And for example, last week, you wrote on your X Twitter account, and I quote you, I will continue calling out all of these US international unions and coalitions who've passed zero resolution and continue shipping arms to Israel every 15 hours for the last 22 months. They are actively participating in genocide and crossing the picket of the working class. Palestinian liberation is not outside the scope of our humanity. So, in your opinion, why have these dominant labor unions not taken a clear stand when it comes to denouncing the genocide in Gaza and stop shipping arms to Israel? And how can workers who are, you know, in those industries, so arms industry and also the shipping companies, is there a way for them to bypass or circumvent the orders that they might get from the leaders of those labor unions?
Yeah, I mean it's a very complex answer when to give right now because I'm only one individual that's been calling this out as far as a labor leader from America. I know there's other labor rank and file locals and workers who have been disrupting and trying to pass resolution, if not already passed resolutions for certain local chapters. But you're right, it's the internationals, it's the coalitions, it's the leadership of these entities that's ultimately deciding the fate for the millions of workers that they're representing. Instead of listening to the public opinion of the American working class, unfortunately, the reason why these labor unions continue to be complicit is because they're allowing politics to run their union. Whatever the Democrats or even the Republicans, because it's a bipartisan genocide, whichever way the wind blows, the unions in America blow as well. They go, if the Democrats call ceasefire, they call ceasefire. If the Democrats don't call ceasefire, uh, virtually they won't say anything about it. They will try to ignore it. And I've seen some articles and statements saying that these coalitions have stated that Palestine is outside the scope of labor. That's why they have passed zero resolutions. Not only not passed any resolutions, they actively fought against resolutions that were presented to be passed. So they're not just more than complicit, they are actively um, chose a side, and that is against the working class. That is to stand with Israel no matter what. The claims of Israel have a right to defend itself. They're standing with that as well. And they're basically saying that war is bad, but we're not going to stop withhold our labor because one demographic is being slaughtered, and that is the most diabolical thing that labor union can do, especially the ones in America whose slogans say an injury to one is an injury to all, except for, and they might as well say except for if you're Palestinian, because if you're Palestinian, then the injury that you receive, we're not going to care about. And that is the reason why I'm going to continue as a labor leader, as somebody who's been invited to most of these unions' homes, headquarters, been invited to keynotes, to panel discussions, speaking to their workers, their rank and file members, doing demonstrations together, collaborations, all these different things, praise because of our victory against Amazon. I'm going to continue to call them out for their silence and complicity, participation. And the same thing with these politicians from Bernie Sanders to AOC to any progressive that you can think of that have shook my hand in the past, who have showed up to take pictures with me, who showed up, who wanted to praise me when I took on Amazon. I'm going to continue to direct my attention towards all of these people and entities that call it out that have been doing nothing to really, really get a liberation for the Palestinian people. And um, lastly, uh, the fact of the matter is that labor unions in America uh, have been complicit. They are deliberately failing the working class. The U.S. labor union movement is dying. It's a dying breed right now, especially with the threat of artificial intelligence. So it's just ironic that they want to call out corporations and corporate greed and artificial intelligence and try to save jobs of the working class here, but don't want to relate the fact that artificial intelligence is being used in this genocide from the same corporations that they want to unionize. We can't have it both ways. We have to draw the line and pick a side. And I'm choosing the side of the working class, and I'm hoping that my calling out of the complicity and the participation of these unions will help bring people who are even not in the unions, everyday Americans, everyday civilians, everyday community leaders. I hope that I can bring them all together to protest against these larger institutions and hopefully get to a point where we can shut it down.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Among the other people that you've called out recently, and you've mentioned some of them before, politicians who've been identified for a long time, and still, to some extent, as progressives, who've been playing kind of, double game regarding the genocide in Gaza, right? So you've mentioned Bernie Sanders and AOC, um, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's a Democrat uh, member of Congress. Um, so you said recently, that was also in a rally, I guess it was in New York. You said about these two politicians, and I quote you, that they've been traveling the country with this fake ass fight the oligarchy tour, and they're telling the crowd that Israel has a right to defend itself. So, do you think that there is a way out of what you've called, once again, you've used the expression earlier in the interview, what you called the bipartisan support for genocide. So, do you think, is there a way out of that bipartisan consensus support for genocide?
There is a way out. We can look at other countries with multi-party governments. They exist. We can look at other countries with more militant unions, like Greece with the dock workers union. Um, we can look at Spain, who's fully divested from Israel. The Hague Project, where 12 out of the 31 countries that was there in Colombia a few weeks ago, they voted to fully divest from Israel. So there is a way out. Here in America, we have a two-party system, like you mentioned, bipartisan and genocide. Uh, we have to push a third party that's going to provide all of the policies that we need right now. So I'm working on that. I'm working on try to revitalize the once U.S. Labor Party that we had in the '70s that dissolved. That includes some of the policies of anti-war, of universal health care, universal housing, childcare, etc. But that's going to take time. That's going to take small victories leading up to education on a massive level to try to educate people here in America on why we need to escape the two-party system. The real fight right now, the immediate fight, is with accountability. As you mentioned, these progressive politicians, they've been in power for years, some even decades. Uh, they've been in office. They haven't done much with their careers. If you ask me, if they're still out here um, trying to reconnect with the working class, knowing they had the power. We're talking about the Democratic Party, who once had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency, all three branches. Uh, this administration, who claimed to be the most pro labor union, um, labor friendly in American history. We're talking about the Biden administration. They're the ones who started funding the genocide that we're seeing now, that Trump is taking over and continue to operate with. So knowing that they're putting all of this right directly in our faces, the definition of insanity is literally, when you're doing the same thing and expect different results. We will be insane if we continue to vote for something expecting different results and within this two-party system. So once again, my goal is to hold people accountable while I can, but also build an alternative for people to go through. That's that's the challenge: is how do I build an alternative here in the U.S. where everybody's so divided? And hopefully, what I plan on doing is just, once again, bringing people together for small, powerful days of action. If we are successful, which I believe we can be, just take my example of how did people thought that I was going to beat a $1 trillion company, $2.2 trillion company like Amazon. The answer and the formula to that is simple: bringing people together from all different backgrounds and creeds. No amount of money in the world can amount to the power of people when we come together. Same thing with evilness. No amount of evil in the world can amount to the power of people when we come together. We didn't have money to take on Amazon, $1 trillion company. We didn't have the amount of resources that they spent on millions of dollars that they used against us in one fiscal year. We can never match that. But when we brought people together and said that Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world at the time, makes way too much damn money, that was a way of a commonality of bringing people together. The same thing with the Palestinian movement. Whether you're on the left or right, this genocide is going to have a lasting effect on humanity, on our planet, on the future for our children. And I think when you start to have those conversations, even with people you don't agree with politically, you can bring people together on class lines like that. The fact that this planet is only one planet A, there is no planet B. There's a number of issues around the future for our children, what kind of world we're leaving for our children. And we're not talking about decades from now, we're talking about the next few years. um, I can see that it's starting to wake people up that this is not the way it should be. And I think that's a gateway to how we can escape the two-party system here. And hopefully, people will help me build out the U.S. Labor Party, which will represent everybody, because we're all laborers or workers at the end of the day.
Thank you for that powerful message, Chris. I hope that people who will be watching this interview or following you through your different social media accounts or interviews will learn tremendously from. I did have a last question that is connected to what you've just said about the importance of being not only mobilized but also organized. So, wanted to ask you, what is your advice as a labor organizer, as a black political activist, in a context where there is so much hostility regarding not only labor organizers, uh, but also black people in general? We're talking about the Trump administration, which is fully supporting the genocide in Gaza. So, what is your advice to first to those who are, you know, really outraged, right, by what they're seeing, the images they're seeing, televised genocide, the first televised genocide in history. Um, so some people who are outraged but are afraid to speak up, right, because they fear the consequences. Some of them that you mentioned previously. So that's the first part. What is your advice to those who are afraid of speaking up, afraid of the consequences? And also, what is your advice to those who are already organized, who are already in the movement, but who kind of feel that the actions that they've been doing so far have not been sufficiently, um, effective, right, in order to
Yeah.
prevent your government, my government in France, from uh, continuing, supporting through financial means, materially, logistically, diplomatically, or otherwise, continue supporting the genocide. So, what is your advice to these type of groups?
Yeah, I mean, for those who are outraged and they're afraid to speak up, I understand that aspect of it, but that's once again another capitalistic stigma that they try to oppose on us as the working class. The way capitalism thrives is by dividing people and creating fear and doubt. That is the formula to capitalism. Besides the fact that you can't have capitalism without racism, like Malcolm X said. And even with the stigma of black people should sit this one out, the Palestinian fight is not our fight. These stigmas were not created by the people. They were created by our oppressors, the ones who want to keep us divided, the ones who want to instill fear into us, saying that if you do anything, you will face punishment or even worse. And the ones who wanted to create doubt, saying that bringing people together is not going to help. This has always been going on. The war in Gaza, the genocide in Gaza is always going to happen. You have those folks who ignore it, who say like, no matter what we do, nothing's going to change.
Mm,
Um, these these are once again stigmas that I've once again dealt with taking on Amazon, bringing it back to the fact that the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, who was making $13 billion a day, $9 million an hour, $5,000 a second, had a meeting about me, somebody who was making less than 50,000, who was only trying to protect his workers during COVID, um, to have a meeting about me and say that I'm not smart or articulate, which is another stigma in the black community that we're not smart or articulate enough to even talk about health and safety, working class issues, or anything. These, once again, correlates to the same stigmas of fear and doubt and creating division. Why we cannot allow our oppressors to do that. And for those who are outraged and don't know what to do, um, I understand why you feel that you're afraid to speak out. But I would say that there's strength in numbers. It's more of us than it is of them. 99.9% of us are not a part of the billionaire working class. The 1%, the 0.1%. Um, we outnumber them. We uh, we can shut down their operations and cut off their revenue if we choose to. Withhold our labor, which is our ultimate form of protesting, is withholding our labor. Billionaires won't be billionaires without exploitation of a class of people. So knowing our value, who's really the rich people is really us, but we don't understand that value to the aspect of it. Knowing that your voice is important and imperative because Palestinians, they have voices themselves, but if they use their voice right now, they can get killed. We have to do it for them. And that's the call of action is, and that solidarity is you show up because it costs you nothing to show up for somebody else. And the fear of speaking out is real, but when you do it as a group, as a collective, it's extremely powerful. And I'm a prime example of that. My union is bringing people together. Same thing with the Handala mission. All 21 of us volunteers, I knew that even they knew that I was a black man, vulnerable to being subjected to even more danger. But I still trusted them to be there by my side whenever it was going to happen. So my advice to anybody is do what you feel you can do in your own control and your own capacity to speak out. That doesn't mean join the flotilla. That doesn't even mean going to a protest. It could just mean resharing on your social media, a post, um, anything, or even better than that, I would say start these conversations in your own household. A lot of people are living with people who want to ignore it, who choose their own family, their own friends, their own neighbors. Those are the conversations that are very important as well. If you start to find like-minded individuals, it will empower you to speak out even more. So find a space, find a community that speaks to you. Get involved in whatever capacity you feel that you can contribute. And we all have roles to play. To the second part of your question is, what can those who feel like their work is meaningless? Everybody has a role to play in this fight for humanity. Yes, we're fighting for Palestinians' liberation, but we're ultimately all, as human beings, we're fighting for humanity, and we're fighting for our planet. We're fighting for our future. So your actions are never meaningless. Whether it's a protest, whether it's an encampment, whether it's calling out government corporations, protesting at the embassy, protesting at media outlets, protesting at union halls, hopefully disrupting meetings, disrupting politicians. Everybody joining flotillas. Everybody has a role to play. And I would just say continue doing what you're doing, or take it a step further. If you feel that you have to do more direct action, we say this in the movement, that direct action always gets the goods. The flotilla was my way of taking direct action. Doesn't mean that you have to do that, but if you feel that you want to take more direct action, there's plenty of people that we know are complicit here in America where we can aim and take focus on. And whether it's the White House with the Trump administration, or whether it's the AFL-CIO, a labor union federation, I encourage everybody to try to do more than what you've been doing.
Chris, I would like to thank you for your time, for your
Thank
involvement,
you.
for being a source of inspiration, not only to me, but to many people I know who are involved in the solidarity campaign with Palestinians. Um, so, to our viewers, we'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch this, what I think will be a historic interview with our comrade, friend, and brother Chris Moles. So, please like, share, and subscribe. And I also like to have a special uh, thought for our comrade and friend, Ramzi Baroud, who's a Palestinian from Gaza, uh, who was supposed to be with us today, but we had some technical issues which made it impossible for him to be here today. But I know, knowing him, I know that his heart is with us. The Palestine Chronicle is also under attack by the U.S. government. U.S. congressmen wanted to, who still want to get it banned. So for those who can, please support Palestine Chronicle as much as you can, whether legally, uh, politically, financially, or even the social media. Otherwise, please keep sharing the content that the Palestine Chronicle has been is still producing. By the way, it's been existing for over 26 years. It's at the front line to denounce the genocide in Gaza. And
Right.
yeah, please keep posted and please keep following Chris as well. Um, his demonstrations, his calling out the people who are complicit in the genocide, and looking forward to having another conversation with you or even meeting you uh, physically. So thank you very much again for coming on the Floodgate
Absolutely.
podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to meeting you one day too. And yeah, free Palestine. Thank you.
Free Palestine.